Hello everyone, I'm Sylvia from Fairlight Tarot. Welcome to my channel and welcome to a new episode of Tarot in the Times of. Today we're going to talk about conflict, and it can be any type of conflict in any kind of situation. It could be conflict in a relationship, it could be conflict at work, it could be a conflict between a couple of friends. The important thing is that I want you to focus on the main drive, the main emotional drive of a conflict, and that generally tends to be anger. As usual, I'm just gonna talk about the content of today's videos while I'll show you the decks that I will use later to give you a few sample readings. So today we're going to have a look at the Amenti Oracle, the Oracle Danka, the Penelope's Tarot, and the Millennial Tarot. So the Amenti Oracle, a feather, heart deck and guidebook, ancient wisdom for the modern world. This is by Jennifer Sudini, and it's the same team that also produced the Modern Nirvana Oracle, which is just as beautiful. The production value of this tarot, of this Oracle deck is very good. As you can see, it's got a really nice wraparound box, magnetic closure. It's got a really nice, fully colored book. And the deck comes in another tuck box, but still really high quality. It's a really beautiful deck. It's one of the decks that I use whenever I feel that there's a bit of a lack of balance in my life and I want to go back to that kind of peaceful acceptance of things. Not necessarily surrender, which is a concept that if you're familiar with yoga, for example, the concept of surrender is a beautiful concept in which you just accept whatever it is that you're living, that you're going through, and you just realize that you can be your best self, you can be the best version of yourself when you focus on whatever it is that makes you human. I think that concept is really beautiful, and it reminds me a lot of some of the feelings and reactions, I say, that we can encounter whenever we use this deck. If you're not familiar with this deck, let me just see if I can zoom in. I'll call it one of the typical advice or exhortation kind of decks. And the reason is that it comes with, I think it's 42 cards. It's a really good quality matte, and the artwork is spectacular, as you can see. What I really like about this deck is the fact that each and every card comes with the word I. So it takes a very strong first-person perspective. And this way, it's kind of giving you a responsibility. It's kind of giving you almost like a job to do. It's advising you to do something according to the card you pull. So in this case, for example, you've got I spread joy, I follow my inner guidance, I am peaceful, I relate in peace. As you can see, it's a very soothing kind of deck. And it's very beautiful. The artwork is, I think, very, very gorgeous. But I really resonate with the keywords. It's not your typical oracle deck that you can use for a divination, for example. And I believe that there are different decks. Sometimes you can use it as a wrap-up, for example, of a reading. But I believe that there's a lot of other decks that have simply that function. In this case, this deck is so versatile for use in your own personal practice that I think it is best used that way. So this is the Amenti Oracle, and let's just have a quick look at the cards while I'll talk about the argument we're going to look at today. So conflict and anger. So anger is a very powerful, basic human emotion. Like any other emotion, it's originating in the brain. It has a very characteristic chemical fingerprint where we generally see high levels of cortisol. Now, if you're not familiar with cortisol, it's the stress hormone. Whenever there is a situation in which there's high levels of stress, you can be sure that if you had a portable MRI and you could do some kind of a brain scan or you know, analyze your blood, you could definitely see high levels of cortisol. Now, like any other emotion, anger is the expression of something that makes us human. Talking about anger this day and age is actually difficult, I find, because it's generally seen as a negative emotion. Quite often it's stigmatized, it's criticized, and it's generally the object of a very popular bias. And one of them is that whenever there is a conflict, we tend to believe that if a person gets upset and displays symptoms of anger, turning red, for example, it is the person that displays anger that is in the wrong, which is not necessarily true. We need to step away from that concept because it is the foundation of a lot of misunderstanding. The second oracle we're going to have a look at today is the Oracle Danka. It's a French oracle, but if you're familiar with it, if you're familiar with it, the keywords are very understandable, even in English. And if you don't speak French, you can use Google Translate, and it actually works really well with this oracle. It's a very special oracle that has got some very specific kind of use because let's say that even the title of the oracle is the liberation, the taking freedom of your state of mind and cleaning up your cellular memory. So it's looking into cellular imprinting. Whenever we look at a situation and we identify the reason why there is conflict, for example, this oracle will help us point out the cause, the roots of this situation. It will point out at the patterning of the situation itself, and it will also give you an advice on how to best deal with the conflict itself. Now, having a look at the oracle deck, I would just proceed in describing the human approach, the most popular human approach to anger. Now, we tend to believe that whenever there's a conflict and one person remains calm and the other gets angry, there is no scientific reason to believe. So when there's a conflict and one person remains calm and the other gets angry, there is no scientific reason to believe the angry person is actually the guilty one. This is just what we are conditioned to believe, and by conditioned I mean trained. But let's have a look more in depth. So generally speaking, when we feel anger is because something... So generally speaking, when we feel anger, it is because something has been triggered within ourselves. And in this case, we can affirm that anger acts like a telltale mechanism of a release. And this is very important, it's a keyword, release. We may feel like someone's done something wrong to us. We react with anger because we feel the injustice of it. Feeling angry about something is completely natural. It's when anger expresses itself with an aggression, which could be physical or verbal or both, that we need to work on it. Aggression needs to be avoided, not anger. I think it's very important to make this distinction. Anger is a healthy demonstration of our state of mind. When anger turns into aggression, whether it's physical or verbal, then that's when it's wrong. A few years ago, the problem with stigmas whenever we look at an angry person is that we never believe that anger is justified. We always think automatically that if a person gets angry, it means whenever someone gets angry, it's because they've done something wrong. And the resolution of conflict is not a peaceful one. First of all, because in the case of the person that gets angry actually is in the right, and there will still be a conflict. You do not get to a resolution or a peaceful resolution of a conflict when you do not get back that kind of balance that has been disrupted. So my suggestion is to stop automatically assuming that the person who displays symptoms of anger is the one that is wrong in a conflict. If we do that, we actually open ourselves up to useful and peaceful resolution of conflicts, which is something that we want to achieve. The next deck I'm going to show you today is the Penelope's Tarot by Sam West. I believe that now she prefers to go by the name Sam Rook. I got this deck on a sale from her website, and it was a really nice surprise because it actually came unexpectedly. It didn't really take a long time to arrive, which is very unusual because everything that comes from the US towards Australia, it takes at least a month. But I actually got this deck in within 2 weeks, and I was really happy. It's a beautiful deck. It's got the kind of color palette that I really like. It's got the kind of artwork, it's so typical and recognizable by Sam that I really enjoy. If you own, for example, the Macabre Tarot or the Rainbow Moon Tarot, you will familiarize yourself with their style, which is very soothing, I find. And combined with these pastel colors, this deck is, I think it's a very peaceful deck. I can give you my personal experience because I'm someone who hurts a lot when something unfair or unjust happens. I've been told all my life that I'm oversensitive or emotional or easily upset. And the thing is that nowadays there's no, let's say, bad characterization of the word oversensitive or emotional. Back then, back when I was going to school, for example, it was actually very unpleasant thing to be told. As a matter of fact, even when I was at work, being told that I was emotional carried a lot of punishment with it. I was literally passed on for promotions because I was emotional. Whenever there was a conflict, I got emotional. And by emotional, I don't mean crying. My way of being emotional is to get upset, is to get angry. I never get aggressive. I am never violent. I couldn't be. But it is a sign of society to just point the finger to the person that turns red in a situation, for example. And if you're like me, you probably, I hope this resonates with you because it's something that I see more and more often, even in parents raising their children, telling their children that they should not get angry and punishing them, or actively trying to prevent them to express their anger. There is something, I think that it's the most important thing is to make that distinction that we talked about before. So anger is not aggression. Anger can become aggressive, and that's where you should definitely work on it. But anger itself, it's simply a basic human emotion, and it's the result of a trigger. It's the result of a situation that puts us under a lot of pressure, and it's the result of a rise in the levels of cortisol that we talked about earlier. It's the stress hormone. For the reason that I said before, whenever I'm in a conflict, and I can only talk about personal experience in this case, whenever I'm in a conflict, I tend to try and understand the reason why someone would show anger. I don't automatically point fingers. I try and understand what has been triggered. Perhaps there's some emotional involvement that I'm not aware of, or perhaps there is some emotional involvement on my side that I'm not aware of. Again, I want to specify that I'm not talking about violent expressions of anger. It's just the non-violent expression that is a healthy product of our mind. Getting to understand the reason why a person might get angry is at the base of a peaceful resolution of a conflict. And I believe that in many cases, it's the only effective way to resolve a conflict. And the last deck that I'm going to show you today related to this episode is the Millennial Tarot. I have just uploaded a couple of days ago a full walkthrough of this deck. I've also shown a couple of Oracle decks that you can pair with it, and I've also had a look at a couple of sample readings, as you know, suggested by the creators themselves. This deck is amazing. So I've had a few comments of people saying that they don't resonate, and it's absolutely fine. It is one of those decks that I believe resonates or not. It's so very specific of a generation or of a couple of decades specific for this generation, that obviously if we were not part of this type of culture, the words would definitely not all of the words resonates with everyone, but in some cases almost none of the words will resonate. I imagine in my case, I am not a millennial, but perhaps because I was a late bloomer or something like that, some of these words actually do, most of the words actually resonate with me. And I feel like I was literally living and seeing the world in the way in which this deck is depicting it. So I did not have a disconnect when looking at this deck. On the other hand, though, I'm thinking there's a lot of other tarot decks that create a disconnect with me, whether they're, I don't know, perhaps they're very specific of a geographical area. For example, I tend to really like African-based or African themes deck because I really love the artwork. But obviously, I do not share that culture. I can admire it, I can have some knowledge on it, I can study it as much as I want, but I do not belong to that culture because it's not my culture. And therefore, there might be some disconnect whenever I use an African theme deck. Which doesn't mean that I'm not using it. I still am because I really like them. But on the other hand, it comes to have a different kind of meaning for me. And I believe that's the way in which this deck can be used. So if you watch my walkthrough, there's a few hits and misses though, and it's related to the fact that it's primarily an RWS-based deck. However, some cards, in my opinion, do not reflect, they cannot detach themselves from the core meaning of the RWS symbology. I really do like it though. It's, as I've explained as well, it's an AI based and then further photoshopped deck. And I do not know yet, I don't have all the elements at my disposal to be able to give an opinion about what I think about AI decks, and I don't want to jump to conclusions. What I can say is that this deck actually resonates with me. I like the artwork and I enjoy reading with it. But let's have a look at the way in which I use tarot, specific tarot decks in a specific kind of spread to find a peaceful resolution to a conflict. Now, for decks, we're going to have a look at the Millennial Tarot for tarot and the Penelope Tarot. And for oracles, we're going to have a look at the Amenti and the Oracle Danka. However, if you don't have these decks, it's not a big deal. What I do recommend is to use, as for a tarot, any RWS-based tarot to identify the situation where the conflict has arisen. And if you don't have the Amenti Oracle or the Oracle Danka, what I do recommend is finding any type of oracle that has positive affirmations. So that will be helpful, and I will show you how I use these two decks together. To start with, we're going to have a look at the deck. I want you to just go through the deck you've chosen and find the card that most resonates with you when you focus on the conflict that has arisen. In my case, I know already it's the Five of Swords. In this case, the Suit of Swords has been renamed to Thoughts. So I'm just going to have a look at it. Okay, so I found it. It's the Five of Thoughts, and it's got the keyword gaslighting. Now, the reason why I've chosen this card is because for several reasons, recently I feel like we live in a situation in which there's a lot of gaslighting going around in the world. And mind you, I'm not talking about anything specific. That's how I want to express this, because it's very important. It's a general feeling. I have the impression that many things has been, many truths have been kind of manipulated, even though, you know, the verb manipulate has a negative connotation. In some cases, there has been a negative manipulation. In some cases, there's been not a positive manipulation, because I don't think that those two terms can go hand in hand together. However, there has been some kind of modification, let's put it this way, to present some kind of harsh thoughts in such a way that they were acceptable. And if you look back at the last 3 years, there's been a lot of uncertainty. We've been talking about that in the episode Tarot in the Times of Uncertainty. We have been scared by the news, obviously. We had lived through a very unsettling 3 years. I tend to be oversensitive, and this time I'm using this word with pride, because this is what makes me the person that I am. Being an empath is something that I actually cherish right now, after decades of being told that I was oversensitive and being having that used against me whenever, you know, there was a decision to be taken about my life. I actually now reclaim that word, and I justify that by realizing how many people I've actually been helping thanks to the fact that I am oversensitive. So there is a dark side of being oversensitive or being an empath as well. And this dark side comes from the fact that we tend to see through things. It's something that I have, and it's very characteristic of my personality. I tend to see through BS, and I can detect a lie a mile away. I don't know if you guys are watching Poker Face. I really like, what's the name of the actor? Natasha Lyonne, I think her name is. I really love her. She is absolutely brilliant in that show. She plays the part of a woman that has the ability of tell lies. So whenever someone is lying to her, she feels that that's a lie. And this way she gets to travel the country, because obviously she has a bit of trouble and she has to run away. And while doing that, she travels throughout the United States, and she basically solves murder cases everywhere she goes, because she has this ability. It's a really brilliant show. I really like her. She's a fantastic actress. Now, I believe that I don't have that kind of magical ability, but I do have a sense of finding the typical telltale signs of people whenever they are talking about something that is not true. And I would definitely focus on this word, gaslighting. I believe that there's been a lot of people not telling the truth. And I'm not just referring to one or another specific event. As I said before, it is very general. We live in a day and age in which we cannot even trust whatever we read. And I think the most terrible thing is that we're getting so used to it that it's kind of become a given. It's granted that whenever you read something online on the paper, or you hear it from someone, you automatically are suspicious, because we've been told so many lies that it's actually very possible that whatever we hear is a lie. I think it's terrible. I know that human beings have a very strong adaptability and resilience, but realizing this it hurts a lot. We cannot trust anyone, or we believe that we cannot trust the media, for example, and we have reason not to trust the media. And it's terrible, because where else do we get news if not the media? So automatically it feels like we cannot trust the media anymore. So I believe, I would love to hear whether in the comments below whether you agree with me or not, but I do believe that we live in the era of gaslighting. Whether the gaslighting is done to make us go through things, to embellish a very negative situation so reality is manipulated. But gaslighting to me has a very and mostly negative connotation, and it's the way in which someone is using facts and manipulating truth in such a way that they get advantage from it, and they put you, who are being gaslighted, in a situation in which you believe it's always your fault. So gaslighting to me is the essence of anger, because whenever there's a conflict and someone gets angry, the automatic assumption is that that is the person that is in the wrong. So I chose this card to symbolize the conflict. To me, there's a lot of gaslighting in the world at the moment, and this is the position number 1. So the conflict, representing the conflict. Now, position number 2, we're going to have a look at how it's affecting me. This time I want you to just shuffle the deck as I've done, and just pull a card. So in this case, I have pulled the moon. I think that the tarot is indicating a very general situation for me. The moon is very related to the way in which I see what I've talked about, so the gaslighting that is going on in the world right now. So the moon to me is the light that is not powerful enough to show you everything. That's probably a shadowy way to read the moon, but in this particular spread, feel free also to read reversals if you read reversals, because in this particular situation, we see the conflict, but we also see the way in which the conflict is affecting my life or my emotions at the moment. And the way in which I see the moon is not the positive side of the moon in this, which is, you know, tapping into your own intuition, for example, doing some kind of introspective kind of work, energizing, etc. In this position, to me, it's as if the moon I pulled right now would have been pulled in reverse. So it's the shadowy part. It's the part that tells me that I don't know what's going on. There is something going on in the background that I'm not aware of. There is someone possibly acting against me in the background. And I feel that this is very strongly reaffirming what I was saying about gaslighting. It's kind of a complementary card. What we are living through right now, it's exactly this. We have been told something. We've been told that it's the conflict that is at hand. It's our own fault because we've expressed anger. We've done certain things that are a no-no. We've been victim of this gaslighting. But we actually found ourselves in a situation in which we do not have clarity. There is something working in the background we are definitely not aware of. So this is let's say, it's a very good example of how this spread would work. Now, for position 3 and 4, I'm actually going to use the Oracle Danka. Okay, so I had to make some room as always, but I'm just keeping the bottom part of this card because I want the word gaslighting to be always visible. So now from the Oracle Danka has got 3 different sections on the cards. I am only going to use the, let's say, kind of orangey, the ones with the orange kind of backs, and the ones with the pinkish, the pink kind of backs. So what these are in specific, these are the underlying emotion and the real cause of the conflict. So I'm going to shuffle them. Okay, so the underlying emotion, I'm going to pull a card from this, the pink kind of backs. And we've got the harmonization between the heart and the mind, which is very, very powerful. And I'm also going to pull a card from the orange backed cards, which are the cards related to the root cause of the problem. And we've got the other's intention, so the intention of other people. Okay, so this, as always, become a very powerful reading. So I'm just gonna try probably to put these two on the sides here, so it's easier to see them, because I'm gonna have to pull another card here, the Oracle card, the Amenti. So having a look, so we talked about the situation at present, which is expressing, a card expressing the conflict. Then we had a look at how the conflict is actually affecting me. Then we are going to have a look at the underlying emotion with this card. And we're going to look at the root cause of the whole conflict. And it's also the root cause of the emotion. So when it comes to the underlying emotion, the deharmonization between the heart and the mind, as I said, it's a very powerful concept, because it underlines the fact that we have that kind of disconnect whenever we don't know something, whenever we feel that we are upset about something, but we don't necessarily know why. We don't necessarily even know what's really happening. Our mind takes us in one direction, because our mind is where, you know, the chemical reactions are, and it's not always easy to get a grasp of how the mind works in some situations. What we do know for certain is when the light of the moon is not powerful enough to actually give us all the information we need, there is this disconnect that gets created, and this disconnect is reflected in the way the heart is telling you to react, which is most of the time the opposite of what the mind is telling you. So not only I am being gaslighted, and I don't even know, I don't have enough information to understand what really is going on. But in this case, this creates in me, it makes me miserable, because my heart feels for it, my heart hurts. And there is a disconnect, because my mind is still trying to think, is still trying to understand, is still trying to gather information, is still trying to bring me or pull me in the opposite direction. The root cause is the, let's say, the intention of other people. And by intention, I really mean what they want to achieve. Okay, so it's the other people's true selves. It's the way in which they have dealt with the situation, and what do they want to achieve with that, what their desirable outcome is in relation to the situation. And it's always something that, as you can see also from the image, it is always something that is cloudy, right? It's obscure. There is a bit of uncertainty on this one as well. It is an open book, but the pages are not written, and you can't really see any writing in that. And as a matter of fact, there's this kind of smoke coming out of it, because it is not clear. Now, that's something that I believe is even more powerful. So we had a look at what I believe my personal state of conflict is reflected by, and it's reflected by the 5 of Swords, gaslighting. the immediate result of that gaslighting is a very strong sense of impotence and uncertainty and lack of confidence that I have in my life, because I'm being told that it's my fault about something, but I don't really know. Perhaps it is. However, this has created a disconnect between my heart and my mind, because my mind is still trying to elaborate data, whereas my heart is just hurting. And it looks like the oracle is telling me that the root cause of all this is the intention of others. I find myself probably in this situation because I was not aware of this. I was not aware of perhaps a hidden agenda, perhaps something that is pulling the strings in the background that I really don't know what it is. So it's as hurtful as this situation is, the way to solve this conflict is to go back to this card and have compassion for myself. I'm reading for myself, so obviously I'm talking about myself. Exercising compassion is the only way to reconnect this detachment that has happened between my heart and my mind. Yes, my mind wants to find a solution, wants to get to the bottom of things, but my heart is hurting. So what do I need to do in order to close this disconnect? And that's where I'm going to use the Amenti Oracle. So I put in a card for the Amenti. So the Amenti, which is an oracle, as we said before, that is always looking into some kind of affirmation, or even a very peaceful look at the situation. The oracle says living with a feather heart on the book. So if you're familiar with the Egyptian mythology, you will know that a feather heart is a way to indicate a person that has been good in life. So whenever someone dies, they confront their own past, their own actions in life, and they put their own heart in a scale. If the heart is heavier than a feather, so on the one plate dish of the scale they put the heart, and in the other dish they put the feather. If the heart is heavier than a feather, then it means that this person has had more bad or negative things in their lives. And if it's not, then it means that it's a person that has surrounded themselves with good and positive things. Obviously, as a consequence, if someone has been a bad person, they will go to hell. And if it's a good person, they will go to heaven. So having or living with a feather heart means surrounding ourselves with something positive, with something good. And that's the reason why I'm using this deck. So this position is, how do we peacefully resolve this conflict? And the card that I pulled is, I act respectfully of others. And it could not have been a better card. The whole principle of this disconnect that hurts my heart, because I find myself being gaslighted. I find myself being surrounded by people who tell me that perhaps the reason of the conflict is me, that I'm in the wrong, and my mind is overthinking, is trying to understand what's happening, what's going on, creating a disconnect between my heart, which is hurting, and my mind. And I am invited to see that there is some other person's intention at play here. I cannot know the truth because it's not my truth here that is in play. It is someone else's truth. So my initial reaction, because my amygdala reacts this way, there's nothing I can do about it, is to get upset. So I express this hurt, these feelings of hurt, by becoming angry. And this anger is probably creating some kind of a vicious circle, because obviously when you're angry you also produce more cortisol, which in turn produce more anger. There's no two ways around that. The way to put an end to this vicious circle is to act respectfully of others. It is so very powerful, and it's probably counterintuitive, because my anger would have driven me against others. It would have told me someone is plotting against you. However, this is not gonna be the way to solve the conflict. The way to solve the conflict is to be respectful, which doesn't mean bend over. It doesn't mean give up. It doesn't mean be, taken advantage of. Absolutely. What it says is to be respectful. Okay, so others are doing something possibly negative, possibly against me. Do not react with anger. Be respectful of what they're doing, but take a step back, or do whatever it is to respect yourself as well. So it's not just, you see what it does? It's basically looking at the problem and recognizing there is no magical way to overcome this conflict in this moment. If someone is indeed doing something against me, getting angry about it is not going to solve it. Understand it, but also understand yourself. A really beautiful way to look at this kind of emotion, human emotion. And it's also a really beautiful way to look at anger in such a way that it's not part of the usual stigma we attribute to it. If you're angry, you're the one who's wrong. In this situation, I clearly see that I'm the one that has the disconnect. I'm the one that is overthinking. I'm the one that is angry. But I don't necessarily know what's going on, and there might be someone else acting into it. What I need to do is I need to take a step back, look at it, understand it, respect it, don't get angry, but protect myself. So I really hope that this resonates with you. I would love for you to let me know in the comments below. As I said many times, these videos, they're mostly for people who enjoy them, in the sense that I'm not showing you a lot of decks. I'm not showing you a lot of interpretation or divination. It is merely because it's actually part of who I am. It's the essence of my intention to be helping. And I know that there's a lot of basic human raw emotions that can be hurtful to people. And as an empath, I know that this carries a lot of unresolved issues. And therefore, what I'm trying to do with this series, so the Tarot in the Times of, is looking at these human emotions and showing you my personal experience with tarot in my personal practice, and how I use tarot, very specific tarot decks and very specific layout or spreads, in order to manage these emotions, in order to repair myself, in order to heal. And so if this is helpful to you in any way, I would love for you to please let me know. So thank you so much for being with me till the end of this video. If you like it, please consider subscribing to my channel. More to come. Have a great day.